super excited to have you here and to have some very special people with us today to help us reveal the list of winning entries that competed this year. With us today from the Sigma's team, we have Ken, our competition officer. We also have Gina. Hi, everyone. And Simon Rogers. Hi.
Hi.
Okay, so this is the first for the Sigmas, organizing a live reveal on YouTube. So kudos to that. What's going to happen is just we're going to have a very laid-back chat about this year's competition, have some feedback from members of the team, members of the jury, members of the prize committee about this year's entries. How did the judging go, and what sort of trends and techniques you've seen throughout the jury process. And then we'll come down to the list of winners. So without further ado, I'd like to give the mic to Gina Chua, who is the Sigma's co-chair, and who's going to just give us some understanding of this year's competition. What did you think about the 2023 Sigma entries?
So first of all, I just want to welcome everyone and say I'm standing at the train station because I'm about to get on the train. So if you hear a lot of announcements, well, that's because I'm here, and then I'll go on mute. So look, I just want to say a couple of things right up at the beginning before we talk about kind of the winners, which is I know we're here to look at the winners, but really, you know, everybody who entered, anyone on this call is a winner in their own special way. We did not create the Sigmas in order to have, you know, if you like, just winners and other people. What we did was we wanted to build a community, and I think we've done that. I think the fact that we had more than 600 entries, Marianne, I don't know how many we have right now, but it was another record number.
We had 638 in total.
So 638 entries. I mean, it's just this sense that we've built this network of people that we're sharing ideas and best practices, but mostly we're building a community. And I think that's been fantastic. And the fact that more and more people enter, and they enter from all across the world, shows, you know, essentially how important this is as an institution. I'm really proud that we've done all of this together. I will say this year's entries, again, look, I say this every year, so it may sound a little bit strange, but you know, this year's entries were, again, fantastic. I think it showed the power of collaboration. It showed the power of innovation, especially in small newsrooms and newsrooms that don't have a huge amount of resources. That really proves you can do this work without having a 200-person team working on all sorts of things. You'll see that I don't want to steal any thunder from any of the announcements. I'm not even going to hint at who won and for what. But I will say is that, you know, a lot of the classic things that you think of for data journalism, sort of revealing this particular wrongdoing or that, those all obviously matter tremendously. But we've had people look at historical data to look at, you know, long-term systemic issues that can only truly be revealed through data that I think is really valuable. We've had multiple collaborations across borders and with different organizations that in another world would have been considered competitors. And then we've just got some really good storytelling, even on things where you think the answer is sort of obvious. Of course, I sort of knew that, but to have it proven to you and then to be told to you in a really visceral way, I think has been really, really valuable. So there's just been, again, a host of great lessons and great best practices. And I really hope everybody takes away from that, kind of the opportunity to think about what they might do better. And then finally, the winners are, I think, all going to come to Perugia at the National Festival for Journalism. And, part of that, they'll have panel discussions, talk about their work. I just want everyone to get together and just share notes. I've found over the years that the best work is done in corridors and over a drink, especially over a drink. Anything that sort of moves the whole field along is a real win for journalism. It's a real win for the public interest. And with that, I will shut up and listen and wait for my train.
Thanks a lot, Gina. Simon, let me bring you to the stage too. And also tell everyone who is watching us live that they can comment on this live stream and ask questions or give us comments. And we'll get to it at the end of this stream. Hi, Simon. So first we had Gina in a train station, and now we have Simon in a car.
I know. It's 8 a.m. here in sunny San Francisco, and really glad to join you guys. Sorry that I'm in the car. Yeah, I mean, it's just a really interesting year, and every year I say this because I think it's just becoming a new kind of maturity that you're seeing in the field through these awards. Just like, you know, a few years ago, really a lot of the natural winners were these big newsrooms, established newsrooms that we know, which have lots of people doing everything. But now what we're seeing is really how geographically widespread data journalism is. And, you know, it's all different kinds of teams, and the approaches are just so imaginative. It's so great to see that in the field. It doesn't seem to matter how big or small the newsroom is in affecting how creative the work is. And just seeing that through these awards and knowing that there's like a record number of entries this year, really makes me happy about the state of the field and where we are going forward. It's really become just journalism as we always thought it would be.
True. Thank you very much. Is there any trend or any sort of topic or even approach that struck you specifically this year? Something that came out.
I mean, besides that fact that, you know, it's really more about the imagination and the storytelling ability than it is about the size of the newsroom. I think there's that, but there's also how I think that data journalism went through a phase where it was just like answering fun, curious questions, and now it feels like it's answering big issues. And maybe that's the COVID effect, kind of longer term, that we realize that this stuff's important, it matters. But I'm really seeing it take on big issues in imaginative ways that I think you know, make a difference. We need these data storytellers out there.
Maybe
so I'm just seeing them is great.
And maybe imaginative and creative, because we had a lot of newcomers to the data journalism community over the past year or so. People who just had to become data journalists on the spot because of the new big global issues that have struck the world lately.
Exactly, it's great to see that, and can't wait to see the winners in Perugia. But also, just I hope everybody gets a chance to look at all the winners and just look at the shortlist. The shortlist is all online. You can see who entered. There's so much great work there, and I just think it's such a resource. And these shortlists are becoming like the archive of data journalism, and we have to think about that. I think going forward, like how do we protect that so that we can all you know, take lessons from these pieces in the future. Now I have to go too, but thanks, Marianne, for organising this, and thanks everybody for your amazing entries.
Thanks a lot, Simon. Speak to you later. All right. So now I'd like to bring to the table people from the jury and from the prize committee, so that we can actually talk about the exact thing we were chatting about with Simon, to talk about the techniques and the trends, the different approaches we've seen in this year's entries, and what it tells us about the state of data journalism today. Sure. So I'm bringing in Karen, competition officer, Jennifer Lafleur, hi there, Eva Constantaras, Etha Alhazem, Cheryl Phillips, Dada Lindell, Ali, hey, there we go. That's about 8 of us. Look at this screen. That's wonderful. And we have folks from all over the time zones, right? So thanks to everybody here on this screen. You're joining us from all parts of the world, whether it's super early where you are or super late where you are. Thanks for being there and taking the time. So who'd like to start, give us some insights? Basically, what we'd like to hear from you is, what did you think about this year's entries? And what trends, techniques, approaches caught your attention during the jury process? I know that, yeah, Cheryl?
I just want to say I was really impressed by the number of small organizations that were shortlisted and that submitted, because they clearly weren't letting the kind of daunting technical tasks get in the way of telling really important and good stories, and that was something that really struck me. So.
Yeah, so maybe I can quickly add on that. So I am the one who is doing all the data crunching about all the 638 entries we had this year. This is a record-breaking year. Last year, the number was 603. So we have 35 more submissions. We also have some new submissions from countries that have never entered the competition. So just have a quick glance. I just did a very quick analysis, and I found that countries like Rwanda, South Sudan, Burundi, Guinea, right? These are all countries that we have never seen before. So this year, at least they have at least one entry from each of these countries, and that's a huge thing, right? Whether they win or not, it's I don't think it's that important. But we see data journalism are being done and practiced in probably most of the countries right now. And some major trend that I'm seeing, one is that we really see a lot of data stories about the war in Ukraine, and I think it's not very. I mean, this is like the latest war in maybe a few decades, right? So we don't see a lot of data projects about war crimes, about the progress of war. So I think again, this is a new field that we see data and storytelling techniques are combined and used to deliver this kind of very serious issues, humanity issues. Right? So I think that's one thing that I see, which is very different from the previous Sigma Awards.
Nice. Thanks a lot for the data crunching. Eva, I know that Eva Constantras wanted to chat just before. Jennifer, we come to you after.
Oh, thank you, Marianne. This is always a highlight of my year. And since I've been doing this, I might be one of the only veterans. I wanted to give you kind of some perspective on how it's changed since we started. And one thing I've really realized is there seems all of a sudden to be this really widespread recognition that data stories don't tell themselves. So I think Gina mentioned a lot more kind of human-centered narrative this time around. When I first started judging this, there was a pretty clean divide that the stories were either beautiful or they were really well told.
Yeah.
They had to be one or the other. And it was almost an exception that they managed to do both. And now I think it's almost become the norm that you have a very human-centered story, and there's a sort of a recognition that visualizations can't replace compelling characters or careful explanation. And so with that recognition, you get more ambitious stories that are also more understandable. So some people mentioned that there's more kind of tackling of systemic failures with data. So the data sets are getting bigger, the analysis is getting more complex, but the story is getting more accessible. So I found that really exciting. I found really exciting that so many of the stories started with the stories of people impacted. But one thing I don't see a lot of yet, but I saw a couple of exciting examples, and this is more of a challenge, is I saw a couple of examples that are trying to be more inclusive and accessible to the communities that are actually being covered. Mm-hmm. So they're actually taking the step of, are the people whose data I'm analyzing able to access and understand the story? Or am I being extractive? Am I just telling stories about them and the stories never get to them? So I saw a couple, this is not across the board, but I saw a couple of really creative attempts to make sure, whether it's through kind of like broadcast media that reaches a mass market, or sort of NGOs reaching out to the communities that these data stories about, but how do we not just contribute to this trend that investigative and data journalism tends to be a bit elitist, and we celebrate when the story reaches a policymaker and a law gets changed, but that happens almost without the input of the very people whose data we're crunching. So I think it's fantastic that the humans have sort of become the center of the narrative again. And I think the next step is how do we make sure these people actually are consuming the stories that they're about.
Great insights. Thank you very much. Yay. Jennifer, you wanted to add to that or comment further?
Sure, I'll jump in. And I love what Eva was pointing out, because I think that is super important. My organization covers inequality, and there were a lot of stories that looked at issues from the viewpoint of inequality, which is so important to making change. This is my first year doing it, and it was just amazing, the number of stories and how creative they were. I think what stood out to me was places that have no access to data, how they did really creative things to build data, either through 3D modeling, satellite imaging, open source tools, extracting data from documents. In the early days of doing data training, I heard a lot about, well, we can't do this where we are because we don't have like open data like you do in the United States. But it's amazing how folks have been able to do important investigations and storytelling through creative ways. So thanks.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure to have you. Hey, Dada.
Thank you, Marianne. Thank you, everyone. I hope you can see me well. Oh,
Yep.
Can you hear me well? That's super. So I wanted to share, like, I maybe was waiting for it for several years. The more and more newsrooms start collecting and verifying their data, and obviously that became more essential since in many more countries, people paid attention to the war. And I mean that obviously one of the biggest wars that was in the era of social media that we could have lots of information about was Syrian war, which still goes on. But more people paid attention to Ukrainian war, probably because it's in Europe, and they started collecting their own data, and lots of projects about the war collecting their own data were on the table, and they are on the short list, and not on the short list, but were submitted, but also not only about war. And one of the stories that struck me most is the story of lost abortions, or how is it called, like broken abortions, for which journalists in the short list, for which journalists also compiled their own data, and the trend and the how big is this story, we would never know if the newsroom didn't pay effort to make it visible, because before it was not. And I was surprised how many stories everyone submitted, so among the long list, and I hope you can post on the GitHub the long list who were covering the issues that we would never be able to learn about if journalists didn't collect this data and didn't verify it. One of the projects which is not in the shortlist, but I think is completely worth of mentioning, is project by BBC and Mediazona and Russian Media Zona and several other, and a group of volunteers that they brought to this work is of verifying Russian soldiers, names of Russian soldiers that are dead, and by now they found more than 10,000 of Russian military that were killed in Ukraine, and lots of other projects are built upon this data. So without their effort, that would not be able to do. That's a massive work, and I'm completely encouraged by this. And also all other works that were submitted, I like lots of them, and I hope the small newsrooms that we mentioned that now make more and more data work will continue doing it, because it's brilliant and the approaches are brilliant, and it tells us that it's not like this how we used to think, that it's too expensive for the newsroom, too much resources needed. It seems that it's not, because even small newsrooms can do it and can do it successfully. So that's my considerations.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks a lot. That's so very true. And oh, Etha, Yeah.
Actually, this is my first time as a jury in Sigma, and it was a great experience. And I was able to be in the backstage for each project and to take a look at the challenges and the obstacles that have been there. I've noticed that journalists and newsroom in general tend to use multiple tools to analyze data. It's no longer one tool or one tool task. And also the data journalists, they have to harness different tools to get the job done. So it's become more challenging than before. And this explains why we saw multidisciplinary teams in different projects. You can find the data scientists, the data journalists, the developers, and the others. Also, there were more and more storytelling with less text, and this was very, very encouraging, though, so to make it easier for the reader to be engaged. I've noticed that the environment has a good share, and there is a rising interest to report on environmental issues using data as more public data are available and more sources. And I've noticed that one of the projects, it was about environment outside the Earth, or it's in the space. And this is, I think this is a new topic that could be explored more.
Sure. Yeah. Environmental data is definitely being used more and more these days. And you mentioned the fact that the storytelling technique is being used more than it used to before. I don't know what others have to say about this, about the formats, the new formats that are coming up in data journalism, or the ones that we keep on seeing each year. Is it just a matter of those technologies being more and more usable, more how do you say, easier to get? What do you think, guys? What could we say about the new formats of data journalism, or in the contrary, the ones that we keep on seeing each year? Ali? Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to share first my thoughts. As the last one to speak about this.
Sorry, your microphone has some very strange background noise. Do you have any ways to
Yes,
check it first?
Is it working now?
Yeah, it is. Very good. Cheers.
Great. I was saying as the last one to speak about the interesting stuff this year. I mean, on top of what everyone said, specifically Jennifer and Eva, I've seen two main interesting stuff and topics. The first one, which is as a data scientist, I've been in the field of data journalism for like almost 10 years. This year and like the year before and so on, I've been seeing a lot of awareness acceleration on data journalism practice. How people are really into working in like data-driven storytelling and data-driven, I would say, activities. The second thing is that something really was insightful this year, and I think Eva can comment on this because she is in the same field, which is how some stories were really developed very, very well from different perspectives, meaning that teams were involved, not just single like data journalism practice. So teams were like very well developed design, very well developed data actually points, data pipeline was clearly very good practiced and so on. So I thought that even with web and storytelling practice as well as journalism. So this is something really insightful for this year. And I think now with the revolution of AI, that might be really exciting more for the next year. Yeah.
Eva, do you agree?
Yeah, I think so. And actually, relatedly, I think one of the trends I see is originally the methodology was only something that we saw as judges, whereas now I notice more and more media outlets are publishing their methodology. So automatically it opens up the range of people who are able to replicate similar stories. If it's a story that worked well in Romania, you can try it in the Philippines. I know, and I think for everyone who wins these awards, that should be something that you really think about, that in addition to winning this award, you have a lot of attention and you're going to inspire a lot of people to replicate the methods that you're doing, the data sources you're using. So as much as you can make that public, and publish it, even if you never hear about the stories that use that as their source material, you don't know who forked it. I think it's really important to put it out there so others in the communities can replicate what you're doing, whether they have a lot of resources or a little resources.
Awesome. Well, before we get to the actual list, I'd like to ask you guys, tell me how could we go further now? How could we improve the way we do data journalism? Are there things that you keep on seeing each year that you wish would disappear from the surface? Or do you think that there are some practices that with a little tweak could take everybody to the next step? Yeah, Sherry?
Yeah, so one thing we do at Big Local News is we try to collect data across kind of large regions or areas, but at a very local level. And I feel like the more we can collaborate the data journalism world and share underlying data that can be used for many different stories, then the more we'll level up our ability to tell important stories. And so that's just something that I work on personally, and I would love to see developed more internationally as well. So
awesome, thank you. Ali, yes?
Yeah, I can add here that one of the things that you can actually try to advance this data journal practice in the future is to also focus on storytelling styles that are a little bit harder for data journalists, like for instance videos and like similar audiovisual data journalistic stuff, and also for radio and so on. And yeah, this is one of the things that I think is really important to highlight in the future.
Thanks a lot. Okay, yes, Aithar?
I think, as an example, at Arij, we are in the developing countries. We have a very big challenge to access the data, especially the public data. So one of the things that we try to train the journalists how to get the data. And what I've noticed from the shortlisted projects, there is a kind of collaboration between the academia and the journalists. So we can combine between, there's very great potential for collaboration between research field and we've tried to reach different projects just to fill the gap, so we can get those people who are already working on data, but we can use them in the way that we can tell the story, the human story for the people.
Yeah, and that goes even beyond the academics and the on the field NGOs and all sort of players. Very true. Cheers. Dada, you wanted to have a word?
Yeah, I wanted to add a word because just now, like an hour ago, I finished a training on collecting data for journalists from Belarus. And what I thought during doing it, and what I thought during Aithar was sharing her thoughts, is that probably we should like make some effort to explain to journalists somehow the power of open source tools, because sometimes people think like, people tell me that it's too expensive to us because we know this solution, we know this commercial solution, and it's too expensive to us. And actually, more and more open source tools appear. Probably they are a bit harder to use at a first glance than using like ready-made commercial solutions, but actually they work good. And I know that for some investigative job, Bellingcat sponsors and develops several tools. But you know, in my doing my work, I use so many tools that were not developed at all to use during journalism, but we use that. I think that maybe like I'm now thinking of maybe we should like start a series of explainers or of interviews or something, showing how journalists from different countries, how they use open source tools and what they got during using that. Because it's not just focusing on like open source and totally like replicatable stuff, but also on that that you can adjust it. If you have a developer in your team or you have a volunteer, you can adjust it, and you can like think totally out of box and get absolutely brilliant results. So yeah, I'm thinking of it now, like listening to you, and because I just finished this teaching this course. So yeah, that's what I think.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, we're many to share this thought, I'm sure. Okay, so well, we've been talking for about 30 minutes now. I know a lot of people are just waiting for it now. So we can get cracking to go and list the winners for this year. What we're gonna do is take turns into reading the names of the winners for this year. Again, as a reminder, this year we received 638 entries from all over the world. And so the winners we're going to list today have been picked by in the shortlist first by the jury, and then by the prize committee as the most outstanding ones. We can start the list with you, Dada. Do you want to take the mic and give us the name of the first winner for this year? Let's do this.
Okay, let's do this. As far as I remember, this year we don't have any categories or like something like that. So I am announcing the first winner, and this work is dedicated to the war in Ukraine, as well as a couple of others in the shortlist that you know. So this is work done by Frontline and Associated Press, if I name it right. And this series of like articles and like pages, journalistic materials, is called Putin's Attack on Ukraine, Documenting War Crimes by the Associated Press and Frontline. Yay. So I want to say a couple of words about this work. It's one of the examples of what I mentioned before. A team of journalists collected information and verified it, which is really important now. Verified information on different attacks that were held during the last year. Attacks of Russian army, of Russian mercenaries on Ukraine. They categorized it, and that's very important that they verified it. And they made some visualization. But I think that's a huge example of a database that was collected on Scratch. That's not a single one, and you have seen in the short list another work by Text.org from Ukraine, doing pretty much the same job. And I know that a couple of esteemed researchers also have done this work too. So I think we should praise them all. But the winner now is the team of Associated Press and the Frontline. So thanks to them.
Thanks a lot, Dada. Thanks, and congrats to the guys behind this great project. Jennifer, do you want to give a second one?
Yes, thank you. And another project related to the war in Ukraine was a project by the Australian Broadcasting Corporation called Culture in the Crosshairs. Did a lot of the things we talked about earlier. They used 3D modeling to look at damage to key buildings, and also did a lot of beautiful storytelling. So thanks.
Congratulations to them. Next one up, Ali.
Yep. So the third winner would be from Norway with an organization called NRK, Worlds Apart. What I would say about this, like briefly, it's also based on how TikTok algorithms mainly show and hide things based on several stuff. And I was really interested in how the team used presidential proxies somehow, because I have a technical background. I like those terms, to actually mimic the location and so on, to understand how this was done. Congratulations, and TikTok is one of the hottest, I would say, social network platform that is really very impactful right now. Thank you.
It is. Thanks, Ali. So that makes 3 winners for now. People are not aware of how many winners we're getting this year, so the suspense is still on. So, next one to read a winning entry, Cheryl.
Yeah. So the next winner is the game of Game of Votes, which is, I think, it was an incredible piece of work. It was kind of an app that really showed the connections between kind of powerful families in Colombia. This is by Cuestión Pública. And the thing that really was impressive to me about this is how they went to the various audiences with different platforms, really targeting younger voters. And they also included the collaborative team on this project was amazing. Everything from the investigative journalists to the fact checkers, video producers, developers, data scientists, musicians. I think it's a really good example of how broad data journalism can really be.
Great. And the first representative in the list from South America, because they were based in Colombia. Great, thank you. So that's 4. So 5th on the line, Eva, do you want to read out the next winner?
The next winner is Always Scared by Street Blog from the United States. Actually, this was a good example of how the journalist can get the most of public data by exploring different angles to put more facts on the table. The journalist analyzed 1 million car crashes in the New York City to examine the safety of the streets near public schools. And what I've noticed that during work, according to the application, that the journalists try to find if there is any type of connection between the rate of car accidents and the community where the school is located, and also if there is any noticeable difference between schools of white student majority and those of color students. So such findings, which could be overlooked if we handle the data superficially. So I think that this project was very well. It was a great job, and I think it's one of the most important example. How can the journalists use the public data the most to get the better information and to give a wide scope story?
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Eva. 6th winner, Eva, would you do us the honor?
Of course. I'm very pleased to announce one of the winners is La Ciudad Sumergida, the submerged city, by Amenaza Roboto de Uruguay. This is a really fantastic investigation looking at the phenomenon of basically climate gentrification and how coastal areas being flooded as sea level rises is really impacting vulnerable communities. This is one of those examples where they did a really fantastic job of combining visualization and storytelling. And it's also imminently replicable by other countries and data teams who want a methodology to investigate how basically the most vulnerable communities in coastal cities are going to be impacted by sea level rise. So already I'm using this example for a program I'm doing in the Philippines. I suggest others check out the methodology and also see how much of it could apply to really helping data journalists in those coastal communities explain to people in the city and to those communities the impact both now and in the future.
Absolutely. Well, this is great. So we'll travel not too far for the next winning entry, and I'll do the honor of reading this one. So that's the 7th winner from our list, and this award goes to the team at the Markup and the Associated Press for the entry called "Still Loading," which is actually an investigation that was done about AT&T and Verizon, Earthlink, CenturyLink, saying that they were offering lower income and least white neighborhoods slow internet services for the same price as the speedy connections they offered in other parts of town. And the project included investigative story, methodology, some story recipe. And so the outstanding work that has been done is quite phenomenal, and we're super glad to give them an award for this and to invite them to Parija this year. So that makes it 7. I can tell you we have a few more winners this year because it was just too hard to pick just a few. So we're going to carry on with the list, and the next one to read a winner's name is Cheryl again.
All right. This one is close to home for me. It's in the state where I live. The winner is Grist, and their publishing partners, Voice of OC. The project is Ghosts of Polluters Past. And this project took a look, I think, at 6 decades worth of toxic soil samples and other kind of data on industrial contamination, and wove that into this incredible narrative piece, detailing this historic problem with very high dangerous levels of lead in low income, predominantly Latino neighborhoods of Santa Ana, California. And it was really compelling read, and they couldn't have done that compelling read without bringing in all of the data. So I think it was just a great example of that.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Next one, King. We haven't heard you in a while. Let us know, what's the next winner?
Sorry, I've been busy making an announcement in the chat box.
Oh, of course.
Let me see the list. Okay.
And that goes on your side of the globe, doesn't it?
Yes. I'm going to announce this because he's also
flight to Southeast
also
Asia.
from Malaysia, which is a portfolio entry by Yao Hua Law, which is a series of data reports done by only one journalist, which is Yao Hua, on the forest deforestation and forestry data in Malaysia. So this is just now one of us mentioned about environmental data. So this is a good example of a great environmental reporting that use data to shed lights on issues that were underreported, and also issues that just too complicated to explore. And he is from this publishing organization called Makaranga, which is again a small independent news website in Malaysia that is dedicated to environmental journalism. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Okay, so here I am to break the news that Yao Hua was our 9th winner for this year, and there's just one more winning entry for the 2023 competition. And so the 10th award for this year is actually a decision that has been done by the prize committee to jointly recognize 2 entries on the same topic, because they had overlapping partners, and this award is given to them for their groundbreaking investigation into the inhuman treatment of asylum seekers and migrants attempting to enter Europe. The teams comprised Lighthouse Reports and its partners, El País, Le Monde, Der Spiegel, SRF, Rundschau, and Republik. And congratulations to them for this coverage. So that makes it 10. This is it. We'd like to say a big congratulations to all of the winners, the teams behind these amazing projects. We'd like to remind everyone that all winning entries get invited to the International Journalism Festival in Perugia that is taking place at the end of next month, and that the Sigma's team will also be there. So if you are planning on attending IJF next month, don't hesitate to give us a hello on Slack, and we could hang out. And also, all of the winners are listed on the Sigma's website at sigmaawards.org. We have a dedicated page with all of the winners listed, but also the all-time data of the Sigma Awards. That is all of the entries ever submitted to the competition that are available on our website and on our GitHub. Is that right, King? Absolutely, yeah. So you can
Yes.
check out the winners and all of the entries either on the interactive database grid that we have on the site, or if you want to look at the raw data, go to GitHub and find the spreadsheet there. We know how you love a good spreadsheet. So there it is for you. What we can do now, maybe jury members and prize committee members that are present here, do you have any comments on this list of winners? What do you think of it? Now that we've said the names, do you have specific feedback or feeling about this year's winners?
I would just say congratulations to everybody, and it was a tough job for you judges to narrow the shortlist, because the shortlist itself is amazing. And yeah, shout out to everyone. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks a lot. Okay, thanks. We see on the Sigma stage Slack channel that you guys are appreciating the live stream. That's very awesome. Thanks a lot. And we see a lot of you messaging each other already on congratulations. That's super perfect. There we go. All right. So if people here on screen don't have any more feedback or questions, in the comments, I think that we're fine and that people are good with it. If you want to comment and ask questions, don't hesitate to do that either on the comment section on this live stream or directly on the Sigma Awards Slack team, where we will be anyway. And so I think this is time for goodbye. We've lasted 47 minutes. That's a pretty good timing for that. Thanks a lot, Kang and Jennifer, Eva, Ali, Dada, Etha, and all the others that were just with us before. It was a pleasure to see you. And till next time, have a great end of day or night, depending on where you're from.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Congratulations.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Congrats. Bye.
Bye-bye. Go and celebrate.
Bye.
Bye.